Well, now it's a time for all ages, and this story comes from the Jewish tradition, and there's many versions of it, and this is my version. So it's the story of this teacher, and he's got this class, it's the beginning of the school year, and I know we have many teachers in this audience as well, so you can probably sympathize with this teacher, because he had this great class last year, and he's got this class this year, and they're just rowdy. They don't listen to him, they keep talking over him, they keep interrupting him, they keep, misbehaving with one another, and after 2 weeks, he's at his complete wit's end. And the teacher's Jewish, so the teacher decides he's going to go and talk to his rabbi. Now, a rabbi is a Jewish religious leader, like I'm the minister here as a religious leader of our community. So the rabbi is the equivalent in the Jewish community. So he goes to see his rabbi and says, "Rabbi, I've got this class, and they just don't listen to me. They misbehave. They annoy each other. No one's getting a chance to learn. I know they're good people, and I know they're smart, but they're just not listening to one another." And the rabbi thinks, he says, well, here's my advice for you. Take tomorrow off. Bet you wish that's the advice I gave you all. And the rabbi said, but someone needs to teach the kids. He said, I'll go in and teach them. And the teacher thought, great, day off, substitute teacher, don't need to pay for them. So the rabbi goes in, and he goes into the class, and none of them is sitting in the seats. They're all up talking, misbehaving, and the rabbi comes in and says, can I just get your attention? I only want to say one thing to you. That's all I want to say to you today. So everyone goes, this is interesting. So they all sit down and pay attention to him. He says, I want you to know that there's an incredibly special person amongst you. There's a really special person amongst you. And the students are there and the first reaction is, oh, he must be talking about me. But then they thought about it, like, well, I'm kind of not the best behaved person, and said, but a special person in this class? And he looks around, and it's like, I can't believe there's a special person in this class. And then they thought about it, and they thought, well, there's Peter, and Peter's actually a really good leader of it, so maybe he's a special person. And they thought, well, maybe there's Maria, because Maria, she's really smart and always helps other people with their homework. And then they all started thinking, who's the special person? It can't possibly be Brian, because he misbehaves and dumb. Maybe it's Barbie, because she's always on top of things and knows what's happening next, and it's really, really great. Or maybe it's Andrew, because he's really thoughtful and really understands what's going on and is always there to help others. And so they started thinking who it was, and what happened eventually, everyone started listening to each other, and everyone started treating each other better. And then the class kind of settled down. And the teacher came in the next day and said, this is incredible, children were able to learn again. And he talks to the rabbi, he said, what did you do? He said, I just told them that there was someone special amongst them, and they had to find out who it was. And I think that's a great message that we can all learn from, that if we come to this religious community, we don't know the person. I mean, there's very little we can tell by looking at someone. And I think at the very core of Unitarian Universalism is that we all have this divine spark within us. We all have this special connection to one another. And one of the things about that divine spark, if we see it in others, it enlarges them for it. So I invite us all to think about, how can we see what's special, what's great, what's loving, what's lovable about others? Because that will help boost them, and it will also help boost our community. Today's worship service is, of course, the communion, and it's also water communion, and it's also the theme for the month is belonging. And religious community is a place where many of us feel we belong, but I said, imagine many of us are feeling our relationship with the communities a bit different. It's the start of the church year, but we've come out of 2 years of the pandemic, and maybe, as I mentioned last week, maybe we need to have this practice of re-belonging. How do we reconnect to those communities that are important to us, including this religious community? And today, I want to shift the focus of water communion maybe from what you've used to, away from the idea of telling us where you've been. Because to be honest, that can be elitist. Not all of us have the chance to travel. And so I really want to get a different spiritual grounding for the water community. And today is like 2 questions I've sent out by email, but I want to invite you to reflect on is, what do you do to nourish yourself, and what can others do to nourish you? Because as a religious community, we care for each other's soul. We look after each other. We are concerned about the inner life, the rich inner life each of us has. So I want to reflect and give you a chance to reflect on what would really nourish you at this time. And it may not have been the same thing as last year. It may not even have been the same thing as a month ago. So really reflect, what nourishes you and what can others do? We are a relational religion. What can others do to help nourish you? And the Native American Wampanoag descendant, Gabriel Horn, says this. He says that when we are born, we take a cup of goodness out the gene pool of life. When we die, we return it. The goal of life is to return a bigger cup. So we have to live a life richer and more abundant for those that come after. And I love that idea that we take some goodness out of the gene pool of life, and the goal is to live a life so that we can put more back into it. Because life, even though it may not always feel like it, life is a great gift that the universe gives us. And our goal is to enrich the gift that we're given and return that gift amplified and enlarged to those who come next. But after this pandemic, this whole impact of social distancing and greater isolation that I think we've all experienced to some degree has really kind of maybe depleted our capacity to give back. And I hope that religious community, by re-engaging with religious community, you can once again get enriched and build yourself up so that we can give back to one another and love the inner life, the soul of one another. Because religious community is that place where we come to get our vessels, our cups filled again. There are other places we do it, but I think religious community is one where we do that. And I know many of us are coming back, and maybe you're even feeling it right now, being in this. This might be the biggest crowd you've been in 2 years. You might just have that increased anxiety, that little kind of wariness about coming back, and I think that's natural. I think we all struggle with that right now. And I know Peter talked about the change in the COVID policy, and we feel it is time to move forward somewhat. And it's also a choice whether you come here, and it's also a choice whether we wear masks and get vaccinated. But we do believe, we recommend wearing masks and recommend being fully vaccinated. Yet religious community has a dark side. It can burn us out. People who commit so much time and effort to this community, unless we are filled by what we do, that can be stressful for us all. It can be exhausting. It can be tiring. But I think so much, some of us get enriched by the life we live, the joys that we come. But sometimes we're so busy just enjoying ourselves, we're totally in the moment, we maybe don't realize we're getting enriched by the joy that life offers us. And just like plants, just like flowers need air, soil, and nutrients to grow, life can supply that soil and air and water. But sometimes we don't get the nutrients we need, and we need to add, we need to be nourished. Just like plants, we sometimes nourish with plant food. Sometimes we need food from the community to enrich us. Now, I'm a great believer in nourishing myself. I've got the height and the body to prove it. But I do get overwhelmed with stress and sadness and exhaustion sometimes. And there's 3 solutions, and I think I've talked to you about before. My mum always said, have something to eat, you'll feel better. My mum's solution to everything was having something to eat. Even if the night before an exam and I hadn't studied for it, having something to eat, I would feel better. Now, Natalie, my partner, she believes naps. Naps are a good thing. She's got a nap ministry going on. So. And for me, it's a shower. I think a shower rejuvenates. I love that water, just having a shower. And my solution is have a shower, you'll feel better. And when in doubt, have something to eat, have a shower, and have a nap. Surely you would have to feel better after that. But I think it's important for each of us to identify what is nourishing to us and how can others help us. You'll really tap into how do you really feel? I mean, you're excited to be back here, but are you a little wary about being back in person? That's kind of understandable. But ultimately, I think what religious community is and what ministry is nurturing each other's spiritual being, nurturing each other's soul, nurturing each other's spirit. And the author Michael Meade says this, says, a true friend is not simply someone who is like-minded, but rather someone who sees something unique and meaningful in us. The older and deeper sense of friend referred to someone who knows our innermost self and truly cares for your soul. This deeper kind of friendship creates a shared sense of recognition, a sense of being seen as who you are at the core of our being. It also gives a deep sense of mutual belonging. A person can have great difficulty sustaining a connection to their resilient inner self if they don't have friends who recognize and confirm the deeper sense of self. I want to say that again. A person can have great difficulty in sustaining a connection to the resilient inner self if they don't have friends who recognize and confirm that deeper sense of self. Ultimately, what stands against isolation and despair is the awakened soul, and what helps the awakened individual to stay awake is the presence of a genuine friend of your soul. Those are the words of Michael Meade. And I think that's what we are here for as a religious community, is to take care of one another's soul. And when that might not be the word for you, it may be your spirit, it may be your emotional, mental well-being, but I think of soul as that immaterial essence, that animating principle that gives life to who we are and gives us the personality we have. Because as I mentioned earlier, that religious idea of everyone's soul has an inner spark that grows when it's recognized by another person who sees that spark within each of us. And that's at the core of a Unitarian movement, that we each have this divine spark within us. And I think link that back to Gabriel Horns. Maybe the goal is for us to increase that flame within us in the course of our life, and that's how we can give back to the community. And times do try our souls. It becomes more important than ever that we have friends of our soul to help nourish our inner spirit, and as well to give a true goal and meaning to our life. So I invite you to reflect on what does give you nourishment, and how can others help tender the fire of your soul today and the days, weeks ahead.